Hey everyone, this is Brian from the Tennis IQ podcast. Josh and I hope that you're enjoying the content and discussions that we put out week after week. If you would like to support the podcast and help us to continue to produce quality episodes, visit our Patreon page at patreon.com/tennisiqpodcast/membership. Currently, we have two tiers of support, $3 per month and $7 per month. So again, our Patreon page is patreon.com/tennisiqpodcast/membership. Thank you so much. And now, on to the show. Hello and welcome to the Tennis IQ podcast. I'm Brian Lomax.
And I'm Josh Berger. And in today's episode, we are interviewing Nick Saviano. A little bit about Nick. Widely regarded as one of the world's preeminent tennis coaches and experts in the field of coaching education, Nick Saviano emphasizes the importance of approaching the game with joyous passion and a commitment to relentless growth. Nick has 46 years of world-class tennis experience, 9 years playing on the ATP Tour, followed by 37 years as a high-performance coach. Prior to this, he was a top U.S. junior player and an All-American and member of the NCAA Championship Team at Stanford University. As a coach, Nick Saviano has helped train over 75 tennis players who have gone on to professional tennis careers on the WTA and ATP tours, including Grand Slam winners, Olympic gold medalists, and world's number one in singles and doubles. And in today's conversation, we're going to talk more about Nick's background in terms of his background growing up, playing collegiately, playing professionally, and coaching, as well as his work with Maximum Tennis. So I hope you enjoy this conversation with Nick Saviano. And we're very excited to welcome Nick Saviano to the Tennis IQ podcast. Thanks for joining us, Nick.
No, it's my pleasure. I'm excited to be here.
Awesome. Well, welcome. And we'll start off the episode the way that we often do. And we'd love to learn a little bit about your background, how you got introduced to tennis, and a little bit about your journey.
Well, it's been a long journey. It's been over 50 years, but I started when I was 12, which is relatively late. I was always a pretty good athlete, and I just started playing tennis with a friend. Did pretty well right out of the blocks, and I always wanted to be a professional athlete, played a lot of baseball. But tennis was the sport I picked. And so from 12, I really didn't even get ranked till I was 14, then in Northern California. Then 16, I started to get better, got a national ranking. By 18, I was one of the one or two top prospects in the United States for going into college. So I got a full scholarship to Stanford, which was my dream because Dick Gould, who was the coach there, was the first person to give me a tennis lesson when I was 12 years old. So there was a real bond there. That was exciting. I was an All-American there my freshman, sophomore year. We won the NCAAs the freshman year. And then I took some time off to play pro tournaments, moved my ranking up to 130, went out on the tour, quickly was in the top 100, stayed there in the top 50, top 100 for 8.5 years. And retired when my first daughter was born, February 10th, 1984. Had a wonderful experience playing on the tour, all the Grand Slams, played, 8 different people that were number one in the world at the time, had some nice wins. And it was a great, great life experience going all over. So that was wonderful. Came off the tour, started coaching privately, had quite a bit of success, also started helping the USTA. And one thing led to another after 4 years of pretty good success in junior development and young professionals. I became the first national coach with the USTA. I helped write the player development program 2 years before in 86 and 87, and then I was hired in 88. That was the first player development program. Then I was a national coach for 5 years. Then I went to director of coaching for men's tennis, then was started the high performance coaching education department, where we brought in the USPTA and the PTR and worked together with them. It was a wonderful learning experience for me. And then after that, decided that I was going to move on. I left the USTA in 2002 and started Saviano High Performance Tennis. Been blessed to work with, a lot of players ever since. So that's been the journey. It's been amazing. And you'll hear me say the word blessed a lot. And that's because I genuinely feel, although I work very hard, I feel really blessed and fortunate in every way.
I'm really intrigued, Nick, by as you said, you started late, perhaps for a tennis player at 12. Yet by the time you were 18, you were a top prospect for college tennis, getting to go to Stanford. Do you think were some of the key elements of being able to have, I don't know if you would call that accelerated learning or not, but it was obviously a quick improvement path there, maybe quicker than a lot of players. What do you think were some of the keys for you to make that happen?
Well, one thing's for sure. I was always a very good athlete, and that was magnified more and facilitated by and cultivated by doing a lot of different athletic endeavors. And now research, back then, no one thought too much of it, but I did every sport and climbing trees, you name it, I was doing it. So it was actually a wonderful developmental tool for me athletically when I came to the game. So when I played tennis, I never had a lesson on a serve. I just, my arm action was really good. I had people at one of the first 4 tournaments I played, and a lot of that was athleticism and just the ability to keep the ball in the court. You both will get a kick out of this, though. So I win the first 4 tournaments of my life at 12 and under, and the guy said, "Gosh, you could be the pro there." A local pro says, "You could be really great in tennis, but you'll never make it with a 2-handed backhand."
Okay.
Yeah, because nobody played with a 2-handed backhand back then.
Yeah.
So anyway, that factor and old school hard work, determination. I'm one of 9 kids, and Italian background. My dad had only like 9th grade education. My mom went to high school. Hard work. But, my dad was successful, but worked all the time. And you learn to be independent. So with 9 kids, no one's going to hold your hand all the time. So you go out, you learn to set up your own practices, you ride your bike to tennis. And some of the characteristics psychologically that we espouse and look for our youth to have, that was natural for me. I mean, I wanted to hit in the morning before school. Forget about getting a ride. There's no chance of that. You get on your bike and you go. And so all of these factors contributed, I think, mentally, emotionally, the independence, a little bit of toughness, not having everything handed to me. When I went to do a lesson, I don't want to pull I spend I walk 5 miles in the snow to school. But when I wanted a lesson, I would go and either cut 5 lawns over, on a weekly basis in order to generate money, and that was so that I could save up money to go to Poncha Segura in San Diego. So I'd get on, I'd work, add it up. I think he was like $50 an hour, which was a lot of money back then. And so I'd work and I literally cut 5 lawns, did the maintenance on them during the course of the week and on weekends. And after a few months, I'd get to the point where I could afford a flight down there, and I'd spend the day and I'd get an hour and a half lesson and I'd come back. So, I also, when I was working with a guy named Nick Carter, he had a big piece of land with his court. And I would tell him, "Look, how much would you give me for clearing the weeds?" And he'd say, "Okay, $30. And that was my lesson. So there was a sense of appreciation for what I had, a toughness, a determination. And, in those regards, at the time, it seemed tough. But you know what? When you look back, you say a lot of character being built there, a lot of the fundamental principles of life success were naturally incorporated in that time.
That makes a lot of sense. And how did some of those lessons that you learned, between let's say age 12 and 18. How did how did you apply those lessons when you started playing at a higher level, both at Stanford and then on the pro tour?
Well, first of all, you establish a steely determination, and you don't get discouraged easily. And so I never like to show weakness to anybody. So when I was out on a court or people ask me how you do, it's always really good. I'm doing, how's your game? I'm doing great. There was a natural competitiveness. Look, you both can appreciate this. I had four brothers and four sisters, four older sisters, two older brothers, and two younger brothers. So the word competition didn't have to be metaphorically, I mean, it didn't have to be spelled out per se. You understood competing. If it was for the last piece of cake or on the table, whatever it might be, in the backyard playing basketball. So these competitive skills that were naturally developed really helped me. The work ethic, the independence, and applying that, and the guts and the courage, that I saw from my dad, who moved us from New Jersey when he was 47 years old out to California and started his business over again. And this kind of determination to help his kids make sure that they could get a good education, because at that time California had this great junior college system, so they knew that no matter what, we could work our way through college. And, God bless them, all nine of us graduated from college. And, neither one of they did. So that's a success story in itself. But these kind of experiences, they transfer into, the high performance skills you need to really compete and push yourself and challenge yourself. And you're not even consciously aware of it, but they're there. And when you look back as an adult, you say, thanks, Mom, thanks, Dad, for those kind of experiences.
And would you say, Nick, that those are necessary characteristics to be successful at the pro tour? I mean, obviously they were for you. Are there other things that maybe go into that recipe of being, a mentally tough player at an elite level beyond some of the things that you've mentioned?
Oh, multiple. I mean, there are fundamental as I call it, fundamental principles of life success. And obviously you both are on that stuff, but the approaching things with a joy and passion, having a commitment to be the best you can be, not allowing minor obstacles and adversity to keep you down. When you see your mom and dad rising above the challenges of putting food on the table, I mean, sometimes, we lived in a wonderful neighborhood, but we were the poorest people in the neighborhood. And somebody coming to the door because they're going to shut your lights off, because there wasn't enough money for electricity, that kind of thing. You know what? You get tough, and you learn these fundamental principles of life success. But then there's more subtle things like, the being positive with yourself, encouraging yourself, positive self-talk, not getting on yourself in so many different ways. The fundamental principle of planning, of preparation, of giving everything you have your best effort, of, whatever it might be, these kind of fundamental principles of life success easily transfer over to your athletics. And then from there, you start refining things like staying with your core strategy, problem solving out on the court. You learn to problem solve off the court. You don't just accept on the court when it's not going well. You sit down and you say, what have I got to do? And you start the process. And these are things that we want our young people to do. And, when you meet adversity, it's not, oh no, what's this? No, you say, well, how do I get over it or around it to get what I want? And so these are the things that kept carrying over. And so even in my coaching with the kids and on my site on maximumtennis.com, I start with the core fundamental principles of life success. And then there are core principles of coaching that, as you both know so well, that one translates right into the other. And then from there, I go to fundamental principles of coaching tennis. And there are fundamental principles there. Then from there, and this is a really important point, I don't want to go off track, but so many of the kids, they don't want to develop fundamentals. Fundamentals of the mental game, fundamentals of the tactics, fundamentals of physically being prepared, fundamentals of working on your serve, getting your mechanics down, all of this, so that because they all want to go to high performance. They want to play tournaments that are out of their league and so on. And so in my methodology, I go back to that. So you got to have the fundamentals down to a great extent, and then you build towards high performance principles. And it's just there's a term I use, I call it optimum sequentiality or sequential optimization. And when you are dealing, let's just say with technique, if you don't you could have 5 different things, quote, that you need to work on. But if you're not doing them in sequential order, it's like getting in a car and expecting to drive out the driveway and you haven't pushed the start button. I'm sorry, you got to do certain things in order. So that applies with the tennis, and these are the kind of principles that it's almost like a cascading effect. You know what I mean? You teach these young people things. There's a transference from the fundamental principles of life success. You teach them. It cascades down to the fundamental principles, applying them in the game, and then you're more prepared to handle the high performance stuff. But the gold is in the fundamentals, and fundamentals psychologically, as you guys are experts, having the right mindset, really genuinely being about the best you can be, letting go of things you can't control. Well, you both know, I mean, I'm still working on that. I don't know about you. I mean, that's the toughest one. Being wise enough and having the wisdom and the knowledge and the discipline to let this stuff go you can't control, and then be like a laser into the stuff you can control. And you both being experts, you get this. And I mean, this is the kind of life's work that you do, and conveying this to young people, even in the simple thing, parents often ask me, I say, well, you've got to incorporate fundamental principles of life success in every aspect of the game. They say, well, how would you do that? I said, well, you can do it even in the technique of hitting a ball. And they said, well, give me an example. Well, I'll give you an example. When you're hitting the ball and you want somebody to really execute it well, you want them to keep their head here just for a split second after the hit. Well, along with that, you have to be fully focused on the process of executing and hitting your target. You cannot be looking up and in the future trying to see what's going to happen. So literally, you have to let go of the result. You have to say, I'm at peace with that, and I'm going to execute and believe in myself. Well, that's a classic case of incorporating one of the core fundamentals of life success into ball striking. And the ones that are great, if you ever watch somebody like that's truly great, you watch their eyes. You watch the whole thing, but you watch their eyes. That's the window into their brain. And you see the focus and the absorption combined. And this is, again, right at both of your alley, is that you see combined with a sense of relaxation. There's not a lot of tension there. So there's this intense focus, yet relaxation, which is kind of an optimum state. I'm sorry for going on like that, but
No, I think we love
Love
that. Yeah, right.
yeah.
So there was
Anyway, it's part of
there's
my philosophy.
yeah, and something and I'm sorry, Josh, for jumping in. There's something that you reminded me of from an article you wrote back in 2001, Nick.
Really?
A couple pieces there. One that you were getting at, I think, was if the learning is flawed or if there are attempts to shortcut the learning,
Mm.
the potential for developing a world-class player diminishes. So that's one thing I think you kind of touched on with that
Yeah.
optimal sequentiality, or how you
Yes.
phrase that, right? And then another one of your life success fundamentals, which I
Yeah.
think is also very in line with something Josh and I have discussed on many episodes of
Mm.
talking about what it means to be competitive. And
Mm.
one of the, and there is a sequential order to that as well.
Yeah.
And I think one of the top ones is something you would agree with, which is you have to enjoy
Absolutely.
playing the game and competing. And you wrote in that article, the single most important ingredient to success is the development and the maintaining of a love and joy for the game.
Absolutely.
And that's, I mean, quite frankly, it can be difficult if you're not basing enjoyment on the right aspects
Absolutely.
of the game. So I'm curious from your experience, what are the challenges for players and maybe even the parents and
Oh,
coaches?
you think? Wait. You think the parents there's a challenge?
I don't know. There may be.
Just a touch.
I'm just
Yeah.
guessing that
Yeah.
could
Just
be
a
a part of it.
guess.
But
Every
what
once
do
in a
you
while.
think are the challenges to players learning to enjoy? You know, this is a difficult sport. It's a combat sport, right? That's the reality of it.
Yeah.
And if we think that it's all going to be about playing well and winning, and that's all we enjoy, it's going to be very difficult to maintain that. So I'm curious, how do you work with this? How do you address the challenges? What are those challenges?
Well, I want to mention one thing that I think is essential is that being a great competitor, anybody who is great, and I'm going to drop names here. It's not about me. It's about these great people that have had sometimes the privilege to work with, but even more to be on a court with, to see them up close, to be right on center court, and right there. The great ones in every sport know that competing at the highest level has far less to do with the person you're competing against than it does how are you going to master and get the most out of you. So the joy and the passion comes from a relentless internal commitment to growth, internal commitment to focusing in only on what they can control. Now you say, well, wait a second. Aren't you going to focus in on your opponent? Well, yeah, I can control analyzing my opponent and problem solving for sure. But you know what? If the guy hits a winner, God bless him. Sometimes it's too good. But I am going to make sure that I bite, scratch, kick, problem solve, whatever it takes, everything I have, and the other guy can't keep me from doing that. Nobody keeps me from being my best, period. And once you try to get them to grasp that concept. And now I often say to the kids, and they get frustrated a little bit, but I said, look, I'm going to say something to you, and you're going to understand it, maybe 5% of it. And they'll look at me a little indignant. Like, oh, no, I don't understand. No, because it takes years of wisdom. And, when I say this isn't about the other guy, they get it. But you know what? As we go on, and hopefully through the years, you acquire a little bit of wisdom, and hopefully along with wisdom has to come humility, real humility, because the understanding of there's always going to be somebody smarter. There's always going to be somebody better at this or that. And that in my view, our goal and our objective is relentless growth and constantly trying to improve. And again, great competitors focus in on what they can control. The great ones know that they can control themselves. So when they're playing and they do well, this is an important point I'm going to get to. When you get somebody who's focused in on things they can't control and they want to impress people, whatever, they start winning. And rather than get an inner confidence, they get more stress. Why? Because their focus is on the outcome and they can't control it. You get, conversely, when you see somebody who is great or is going to be great, when they have success, it doesn't ruffle them so much because they know no one's going to keep them from being their best. And so they keep turning back to themselves and they focus on what they can control. And that is constant growth. So you get somebody like Serena Williams, Djokovic, Nadal, Federer. They go out, and I've been right there. I've been on the court with some of them, but I've been there when they're warming up for a final or a semifinal. I've been with players myself that are warming up for finals of Grand Slams. I've had players I've worked with that are winning Grand Slams. And you know what? You know what the conversation goes like if you're talking to somebody? One of the first things is, look, enjoy the moment, like enjoy, and focus on being the best you can be. You can't guarantee this outcome, but guarantee when you walk off the court, you feel you've given yourself every opportunity to play as well as you possibly can. And they're looking you in the eyes. And you're in one situation, the match is probably worth $50-60 million at least. And they're turning to you for words of wisdom. And you've got to go back to what we, as coaches, mentors, psychologists, emphasize, enjoy that process. Love being out there. Let it go. Give yourself every opportunity. Try to see how well you can play. Stay 1 point at a time. Take your time. All of these things. These are the same things you're going to tell a 10-year-old. And here you are, somebody walking on for the biggest match of their life, and you're going over basic fundamentals. Because now, of course, we'd go in and prepare the tactics, and I would spend hours studying every player, looking at every video. I knew when, let's say, like Jeannie Bouchard was going to play in the semis, I would go in every morning and look at every match that the player she was going to play. I looked at every serve they hit, every single one. And before she played Halep, I knew that Halep would occasionally serve out wide to the ad court, but I knew that in 4 matches leading up to it, she only made it 3 times. And that she'll hit it there, but she wasn't making any of them. But she loved the ball up the tee in the ad court. So I told Jeannie, okay, look, you're going to shift over. Let her know you're shifting over. Give her the serve she doesn't like. Take away the serve she does like. So, you're doing all this stuff, but you do that before. And you might have 1 or 2 quick reminders, but it comes down to the fundamentals we know that we work on, that we're committed to teaching the young people. Same basic stuff.
That makes a lot of sense. And I think, especially some of those fundamentals that you mentioned, really enjoying the game, enjoying the development process, really committing to being your best, controlling the controllables. I think that last, all of those are definitely themes that we've touched on in the past in the podcast. I think the concept of controlling the controllables, I definitely view as something fundamental. It's often the first conversation or one of the first conversations I'll have with somebody. And sometimes, some people that I work with will start to roll their eyes because they hear it a lot, but then at a certain point, they start saying it, and we're going over a match. And from your experience, what do you find to be maybe some of the harder things to control? Maybe for younger players, it's a line call that they may disagree with from an opponent, or it's the weather, or what somebody else might be thinking. What have you found are some of the tougher factors to control?
The kids definitely what their parents might be thinking, other people. Our society's changed a lot. And also, I can't underscore enough that there were real scars emotionally with COVID and with the kids. It affected confidence. They wouldn't even understand this. It really kind of threw people off a little bit. And so I see, I don't know if you see in your practices, but there's a little bit more insecurity and uncertainty. And so the getting them to let go of what everyone else is thinking. Now, that used to be pretty easy to explain to kids. But when you see society, and not for the better, is pushing kids towards TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, all the social medias. Now, these are wonderful platforms if they're used properly, but so much of it has created an insecurity about the acceptance of themselves and who they are for what they are. And it's almost like there is a facade being placed out there when they have their Facebook page and Instagram. Oh, I've got to have a cool Instagram to show everybody I'm a happening individual and that I'm always having fun. And I think it creates really serious illusions, and people get what would the word be? They really become not disenfranchised, but they become disillusioned a little bit with their own life, and incorrectly so. And getting them to feel good about themselves, getting them to say, I'm fine. And you know what? I'm out here to be the best I can be. So you not only fight the social media stuff, which has led to some insecurity, but also I love the UTR ranking for many of the benefits. I don't like it at all for a lot of the negatives. And this constant, okay, what's my rank? I'm up and out. It gets the people almost totally absorbed in the outcome to the extent where they choose not to play a tournament because I can't move my ranking up. Now, like I said, it's been a tremendous tool in so many ways, and there are a lot of positives. But it makes it more difficult to keep these simple concepts that generations ago weren't quite as difficult. Now, I think it's exacerbated the situation, combined with the COVID and the kind of insecurity of what's going on in the world a little more, and getting them to have that inner peace that, hey, I'm fine, I'm special, and to know who they are. That's a little more of a challenge than maybe it was generations ago.
Yeah, for sure. I also am a little bit on the older side. My college experience did not have the internet. That didn't come
Yeah.
into play until I was, late 20s. And so I see the same, Nick, with UTR, and especially for those players who want, they say they want to play college tennis, and then that becomes an outcome goal that begins to rule their life. And then UTR becomes a different outcome type of thing that now you've got to get to a certain place in order to have this other dream happen. And there's so many pressures and expectations, and then the joy just isn't there anymore. The learning isn't there anymore. And instead of valuing, as you said, relentless growth, we're valuing outcomes and results we can't control, thus creating more pressure. And then the learning tends to plateau or perhaps not even advance as much as we we would like. And I think it's this generation, as you said, they're facing so much more. And I think it is
Mhm.
important to bring some level of empathy to that, to our coaching. But
Sure.
at the same time, encourage and continue to give the right messages and so forth, and trying to, I think in my practice, and I know Josh and I have talked a lot about this, is making learning the number one goal, like making the whole environment about learning and teaching players that if you do that, the results will come. And it's amazing, and I'm sure you've seen it, when players buy into that, the results
Absolutely.
do come, right?
Absolutely. It's a fundamental principle of life. And what you're talking about, I'll speak even more strongly about the when they are get absorbed in these outcomes, it the best that you get out of it is mediocrity relative to what the person's capable of. Look at once you're focused in on an outcome, it is virtually impossible to have creativity. It goes away. You can't be concerned about making a mistake and be creative. So if you take that even farther, the creative genius is diminished because people don't allow themselves the chance to fall on their face. So they creep and crawl, get anxious when they may lose, get anxious when they win because they have more expectations, and it's a ticket to nowhere. And then it gets even more insidious than that. If you keep going down that road as allowing winning to masquerade as just real success, look at where it leads you. The outcome, the outcome justifies the means. And that can take you anywhere, to cheating, to this, to that. And it's as I said, I used the word very knowingly. It's insidious. And so what starts as something that might be fairly innocuous at a young age, and that they are, totally focused on winning and da 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 da, can really become an obsession. And it's such a perverted outlook towards life because it stifles growth, it stifles creativity, and also it, without getting too philosophical, it diminishes joy and passion and happiness. When I was talking to somebody, I think it was today, and saying it was a parent, no, it was a coach, and I was saying, when you are so focused, I said, look at your life. I said, I don't know all the details, but the greatest joy we get in life comes through the greatest struggle. And they said, well, I don't know about that. I said, okay, do you have a family? Yeah. What was the most difficult thing for you to all the family? Well, what's the greatest joy in my family? They'll say the same thing. Well, what are you most proud of? Oh, I got my PhD or whatever. And they said, well, okay, well, what was the thing you struggle with the most? Well, getting my PhD, or accomplishing this. The greatest joy in life is going to come from the greatest struggles and overcoming, because it's not, people say, oh, love and that, oh, that's free. Really? Has somebody been in a relationship for 40 years? You're going to say it's free? It's really requires a lot of effort. And if you young people, you think it's free, oh my goodness. So the point there is you can't fool life and the life principles. You dance around them, you could jump up and down, you could come up with something super clever and whatever, obfuscate, you come here, there, but you're not going to beat the fundamentals. So you might as well appreciate them, embrace them, and then know that that's where your success and joy and happiness is going to come from. That's my little sermon.
I think a lot of those life principles that you bring up are timeless and
Yeah.
have, ancient in certain ways,
Are
talking
you
about.
calling me old? Are you indirectly saying that?
One of the
No,
original
no, no.
Stoics, Nick Saviano.
I was going to say, in terms of, some of these ideas, the obstacle being the way, or
Yeah.
the obstacle being the path towards, our growth
Yeah.
is, really ancient
Absolutely.
philosophy, the type of thing that's been around for, 2000 years. And I think the same concept of controlling what we can control. And
Yeah.
I think, as coaches, as sports psychology professionals, trying to convey some of these messages, and but sometimes these same ideas have to be lived through. You go through an experience and maybe you handled it as well as possible, or maybe you didn't, and trying to learn from it, trying to reflect, trying to grow. What sort of, in terms of reflecting on performances,
Mhm.
positive, negative,
Mhm.
neutral, otherwise, what sort of a process do you like to go through with players, or do you recommend for players in terms of how to reflect and learn from both practice and matches?
Well, one thing that I do, I'll share something personal. For me, I start my day every day, unless something extraordinary is going on, um, with I start out by reading, some things that are meaningful to me personally. And I have, so when I write my key points for the day, it always starts out with the reading, solitude, reflection, and really giving thanks for the blessings that I have. Every day that starts out. Then, for me personally, and this comes from a lot of years, I will do kind of very advanced visualization and stuff for 10 minutes or so to optimize my mindset and to prepare myself to make this day absolutely the best I can. So, there's a real preparation that goes into it. And I want to embrace each day with a joy, with a passion, with an appreciation. And I do not want to wake up, God willing, if I live to be 85, 90, or something like that, if I was so blessed, I don't want to wake up at 85 and look back on today, 2022, December, it's the 14th, and say, I didn't appreciate that day. I wasted that day. What a shame. That's not happening for Nick Saviano. And I am going to squeeze every life and every ounce of life out of that day. And I do that also, not just for me, but I have my own family. I have 3 daughters. I've been married almost 40 years, and I have, 6 grandchildren. We have 6 grandchildren. I have a 7th on the way. All exciting. I want to try to be an example of trying to do that, of meeting the challenges, of trying to live a life well lived, not because I'm trying to impress anybody else. You know, it, the things that I mentioned earlier, you said they were generational. Yeah, because I'm sure as heck not going to take credit for things that have been around for thousands of years. This isn't about me being so smart. This is about me being smart enough to take brilliant principles that are timeless. And I'll take credit for that, of working at it to try to seek them out, for trying to learn. And that's what I want. And then I'm trying to just be the best I can be off the court and on the court. Now, that's the principles that I want to help my students. And for me, if I'm not helping on the court and off the court with what we're teaching when I'm with them, I'm not doing a great job. And anything short of outstanding or the best that I could possibly do is not acceptable to me. not because of anybody else, not because I'm looking to win an award or this or try to impress, because I feel, and I say this all the time, it is a sacred trust educating and educating, mentoring, whatever. And that is magnified when you work with young people. And I don't care what the world says. I don't care if it sounds funny or corny or whatever. It is for you have such a higher responsibility. And so I set myself to really high standards. And, I start the day, I tell the kids, and that sometimes people, but I start very early. I don't expect people to do what I do, but I usually am up by 4 o'clock in the morning, sometimes even a little earlier, but generally never later than 4:30 unless it's a time change or whatever. And I go right to it. And I don't leave the facility on a normal day till 6:45 to 7. And I'll have lunch and so on, and I get my sleep. I'll go to bed early enough. I take care of myself. I'll find time to do some exercising, all of this stuff. But the point is that you've got to lead, in my opinion, by example. You have to also grasp that when you're going out on the court, it's not about me, it's about them. And it's my responsibility that player, because I have people come, kids all the way from Singapore, that their life is better because they were here. And that we didn't steer them wrong. It's way beyond a doctor's creed of first do no harm. Yes, first do no harm, but you better be doing a lot more than that. And so this is how I prepare myself mentally, emotionally, physically. And so when I'm trying to work with players, I'm about trying to help them be the best they can be. I want them to remember the principles we talked about way after I'm gone. And I don't care. I don't care if when I'm gone, there's no big parade or anything like that. I really don't care. I have my loved ones. I just want people that have worked with me to reflect and say, you know what? Nick Saviano didn't steer me wrong. He tried to do the right thing. He was always giving his best. And by doing that, they see that I have the respect for them because I want them to respect themselves. I want them to see that they're special. So when I'm working like I was working today with a couple world-class players, and one of these little 10-year-olds walked by, I'm going, hey, Susie, how'd it go on the weekend with the tournament? They got to know they're special. May sound like I'm trying to, I don't know, but there's no facade there. It's just what I honestly believe. When I see that little one and they're looking at me and my words really mean something to them, wow, that's a big responsibility. And, I'm preaching to the choir. I mean, nobody knows more than this than you guys, but this is how I genuinely feel. And so, I have a philosophy that I've never really shared. I'll share it here, not publicly. I've shared it with a few people. I believe, and I'll write this up in kind of a drawing, but my philosophy goes where you build on a pyramid. Now people say, oh, John Wooden did that. Yes, John Wooden was brilliant. And he's one of the people I look up to for what he accomplished. He was a great philosopher. If he wasn't a basketball coach, he'd been a great philosopher. But John Wooden often dealt with older young adults. And, when kids are younger, it's a different process, because you're laying the foundation. And when you're developing a player in tennis, you could have a world-class player before they get to college age. So, imagine a pyramid, and it's a pyramid where the fundamental principles are at the bottom, and you work your way up to high performance. But here's my concept, and you guys can tell me what you think. And like I said, I hope nobody steals my idea, so to speak, because I want to share this with a lot of people and develop it. But what I believe is you put another pyramid on top, upside down. Okay? Now, conceptually, you build this high performance pyramid, and then this other pyramid is down this way, and it falls partially into that pyramid upside down. So you have a diamond in there that is, when somebody is firing on all cylinders, but they are I believe, like a Djokovic, like a Nadal and Federer. And also, I'll put Serena in there as she got older, that they understand that their high performance also comes with great responsibility. And even though they are starting to fade in their high performance, a la a guy like Federer, Andre Agassi, I'm using it in the tennis world, their influence and their impact grows. So it's a reverse pyramid, which then ends up where it ends with the end of life and massive impact that has expanded. And that's my version of a life well lived. And like I said, I've never shared that with anybody publicly. But what the goal is to realize, yeah, we strive to be high performance. But if you're really understanding those fundamental principles, great, you realize your influence and you start affecting people in positive ways. I mean, look at how much Federer has done. He's not playing at the level he is, and he's now retired. But has he diminished? Really? Not really. These guys, look at the marvelous things that Andre's done with his life and the impact. And even somebody like, look at recently the passing of Nick Bollettieri, who was a personal friend. He's a friend to many, many people. So I don't like saying it because everyone says he's a friend. He was very a good friend to me. I wrote a letter to the International Tennis Hall of Fame, urging for him to get inducted into the Hall of Fame. And, he appreciated that, but, I believe that he deserved it unequivocally. But, the point is, Nick had an impact. And even as he got older, and you saw that the impact was actually larger in a lot of ways than when he was younger and, quote, working with the high performance people. And so in many ways, we're very different people, but in many ways, he really accomplished that, having a life well lived where he was very impactful, where a lot of people look back and say, he really helped me a lot. And that is my goal for myself, and what I want to pass on to young people. And, I don't sit there moralizing with people or whatever, but it's my core belief system. I'll write that double-tiered pyramid up where you have that diamond in the middle. And in the end, without getting too philosophical, when you see a sun setting, very often the most beautiful colors and the most beautiful part of a sunset is after the sun goes down. And that's the way, to me, is a wonderful metaphor for a life well lived.
I think that philosophy, Nick, is well grounded actually in humanistic psychology as well as existential philosophy. You know, many people may be familiar with Abraham Maslow.
Oh, sure. But
And
you're making me sound smart there. So I'm going to try to steal the, you'll have to repeat those terms you were just using so I could grasp them. But go ahead.
But
I'm aware of Maslow. Go
yeah,
ahead.
so Maslow is, he's one of the more famous humanistic
Yes.
psychology thinkers. And, his hierarchy of needs, which, like yours, would end up, say, at high performance. He called it self-actualization. But in some of his more, not recent notes, but more recently discovered notes, a guy named Scott Barry Kaufman wrote a book called Transcend. And he said what Maslow saw beyond self-actualization is exactly what you're talking about, transcending the self.
Yes,
and then looking to spread, as you said, sort of your good works to the world. So, because at times humanistic psychology has been criticized as being overly egocentric. But what you're saying is when you reach that point, you reach a moment where you realize this is bigger than me.
It's an epiphany.
Yeah.
It's an epiphany that transpires that. And when you see a great athlete and they start to realize, you know what, I have a responsibility. A lot of people are looking up to me. I've got this opportunity to speak or to project in certain ways. And, it's not about being a hero. It's about having a positive impact. And you see it, you go to small families and you see the grandfather was a profound impact on their small family, but he left more of an impact in the end than the significance of the high performance earlier. But it's a life well lived, and that to me is where people achieve happiness, because you get away from the concept. And I don't want to offend people. I am adamantly against the concept of retirement. And that doesn't mean that people shouldn't slow down and maybe do something different and here and there. But the concept of retire, to me, is like waiting to die. And I refute that. I think people don't live quality time, that it's not about just staying active. You have people with age with amazing wisdom and knowledge and expertise. And not that the people have to work a lot of hours, but just giving that wisdom, finding a way to positively impact people. And that's one of the tragic evolutions in our society, is kind of the breakdown of the family structure. And so the loss of the reverence to some of the older people is really tragic. And there are significant ramifications in that for the happiness of people. And, I'm not really concerned about people thinking that my philosophy is this or that. That's just the way I see it. And I feel a solid family structure is incredibly healthy for people, and it gives the young kids a sense of roots and depth of meaning, and the knowledge that's passed on from the generations really benefits and behooves everyone involved.
It makes a lot of sense, and it also makes sense that without some of the higher order things that you're talking about, Nick, in terms of really making that impact, just as we've seen with all of those greats that you mentioned, can't really exist without that foundation, without the obviously the physical foundation of learning to hit the strokes in a proper way, learning the fundamentals of tactics and strength and conditioning and things like that, and also some of the mental fundamentals that we've talked a lot about. So I'm curious, both in your academy, and I think you've talked about this, but both in your academy and in Maximum Tennis, what what does that, more logistically, what does that approach look like of teaching these fundamentals? Like, is there, for instance, the players that play at the academy, is that built into their day in terms of, working with sports psychology professionals on some of these topics? Is that part of the coaching philosophy that's, more uniform throughout the coaches? How does this on a more day-to-day level get built into both the academy and what you're doing with Maximum Tennis?
Well, the Maximum Tennis is kind of a reflection of my philosophy. And as I said, it centers around fundamental principles of life success. And that's, at the academy, that's a huge component to everything that we work on. I pulled everyone together today at the academy, and I explained to them in very firm terms that I've been on the court with real greatness in terms of people that have really accomplished great things. I've been blessed to have played doubles with people that are, were way better than me. I've been in the room with super smart people that, really brilliant in their different fields and so many times. And never do the really brilliant ones, the really gifted ones, I had it where they were condescending, demeaning, not the real special ones. You'll get some quasi super bright guy that thought they're, the latest and the greatest, but not the real special ones. Because in order to be that brilliant, in order to be that that special at what you do, ironically, you must have a core humility there. And that humility is that, okay, I'm not good enough. I need to get better. I need to grow, which is the driving force that pushes them to greatness. So the greatest of the great, I'm going a little off track, but I'm watching, I'm sitting at the French Open downstairs, and my player is going to be going on first round. Okay, I won't get into names. My player I'm working with. So I'm right outside the men's locker room, and then there's the women's locker room, and I have a pass and I'm going in and out. Watching Nadal prepare for a first round match at the French Open, you would think this guy is so focused, every detail, trying to take care of everything as if he's got just only a small chance of winning. I mean, you would say, no, this guy's probably, hoping to win his first round. He's trying. No, that you're incorrect. He's won 10, 9 of the last 10. And that core humility to know I've got to be my best. I got to push myself. He gets out, I'm Nadal. This guy has no chance. The guy who was playing was like 100 in the world. And the preparation, they're going in, I mean, there was no detail left unturned. And that there is a core humility there, not an arrogance. And so you want these principles. And so I was pulling the kids in the academy to say, look, if you're on the court and somebody is, quote, not as high a UTR or not as good, you handle with grace and you focus on you being the best you can be, et cetera, et cetera. So we not only have those, we really are big on fundamental principles of every aspect of tennis and reinforcing that, whether it be physical, tactical, mental, match play, core strategies, your strategy, all of the different components that you could think about. And then, that's what I try to put in Maximum Tennis. Not try, that's what I put in Maximum Tennis. And what I'm trying to accomplish with Maximum Tennis is I really want it to be an oasis. I guess with the academy, if you were to ask me, I want the Saviano High Performance Tennis to be an oasis for parents, for kids, to be in a safe place where they challenge themselves and they learn skills and just kind of old school stuff where they're protected from a lot of the scary things out in the world without, without taking away the challenges and the problems that they deal with on the court and competing and so on. So I want it to be a place where they can learn these principles without a lot of the exterior psychological noise that goes on in the world right now. And that's what I want with Maximum Tennis. Maximum Tennis, I want people to go there and say, the information is rock solid. It comes from fundamental principles in every aspect. And I'm going to be, inviting people to contribute to the site, but it's going to be where they're solid people, they're professionals, they understand that people are coming here, they're trusting what they're getting here. And my methodology and the coaching and the videos are done in a systematic way. It's systematic training as opposed to random. You go on the internet and what do you see? A lot of good stuff randomly placed all over and it's like confusing for me. And so I want to simplify. I want adults to know that if you work on these fundamental principles, guess what? You will get better. I could give you 3 fundamental principles that you could teach to a 10-year-old, you could teach to a 50-year-old, you could teach to a world-class professional, reinforce, which I was doing just today, and you can improve your game 100% with complete commitment to it. I could go in understanding what a real split step is and how it functions and the ramifications. Guess what? I'll throw this at you guys. In my opinion, the split step's the number one thing psychologically you can do to pull yourself into a moment on a court. Psychologically, split step is so important. The ramifications of it are staggering. And why? Well, because in order to really execute a split step really well, you must get absorbed in the moment, focusing in on when your opponent is about to hit the ball. And as you well know, that if you're absorbed in that process, you're no longer focused on an outcome. And then it allows for your visual system, which works in milliseconds, and people don't understand the visual system is part of the brain. It's not like a separate system that's over here and then it kind of, it checks in with the brain every once in a while. It's part of the brain. So if you are being absorbed and really maximizing your visual system, which you are when you focus in on when the person is impacting the ball, you're putting yourself in more of a subconscious mode. The visual system works in milliseconds to pick up different data and so on. So your first move is super quick. And you know what? You're devoid of the stress and anxiety of wearing. So if you tie that into, we'll focus on when they're hitting and be committed to running for every ball. You've got the brain prepared and the visual system firing, and this person is going to move 100% better and be in a better psychological state. You also tell them, guess what? You know what? What you're trying to do, people say, well, open stance, closed stance. Yeah, okay. Yeah, that's a bit nebulous. So you tell the person you want to move to get to the ball in your optimum hitting zone, the ideal distance from your body and an ideal height. You can't do it every time, but that's what you're trying to do. Now, what's amazing about the brain is if you give it a specific objective, It's incredible. You guys know this. I mean, it's incredible how problem solving. And every time you do that, it's data in the brain. It never forgets. So all of a sudden, you got the kids split stepping, getting over there, moving their feet to get the ball exactly where they want. Now they're in a beautiful process. And then you tell them, keep your head there, a split second after the hit, and maintain your target. And so now on the hit, you've gotten them not thinking about the outcome, focusing in. So now you've gone split step, tying you into the moment, move to the ball, just your feet, and then stay right here and let go of the result because I'm so absorbed in hitting my target. Now, obviously, it takes an enormous amount of work, but you see, boom, boom, boom. You do that, you're going to help somebody an enormous amount. And I'm sorry, some people say, well, what is the philosophical ways in which somebody achieves happiness? And you say, well, there's like 4 basic things. And I said, really? That's it? There's nothing fancier than that. And a lot of times it's not that esoterical. It's not so complicated and intricate. It's just basic stuff where you understand it at a deeper level. That's where the wisdom comes in. When we tell a little kid 10 years old, be patient, okay, they understand to a great extent. When you tell them patience is important, they'll look and say, okay, I got it. You talk to somebody who's 60 years old, they understand patience at a much, much deeper level. And that's where the wisdom comes in. Fundamentals, yeah, we work on them for a lifetime.
Well, this has been an amazing conversation, Nick. I love the wisdom that you're sharing. And where can people learn more about Maximum Tennis? Obviously, the URL will be maximumtennis.com, but where else can they learn more about you, what you're offering, and your special wisdom that you're sharing now?
Well, we have the social media sites. We're on Twitter. We have a YouTube channel, and it's easy to find if you look up Nick Saviano. They'll come up. Maximum Tennis by Nick Saviano, and it's maximumtennis.com. And this is going to be a life's work. And you know what? My goal. I didn't say this. I'll say it publicly for the first time. But my goal is it's a subscription based. And I have funded everything about it. I've not, it's 100%. I own it and I've committed to it. And my goal is to get this, you get memberships and that's fine, is I want to get this to a point where I can offer it to people that are working in underprivileged communities in programs, to give those coaches a membership scholarship so they can get that. And they're going to have to be certified that they're working there, as long as they're working there. But I want to indirectly get a lot of this information to people that otherwise wouldn't get it. And I want to do that throughout the world. It's a major undertaking. So I'm running a business. I want super high quality product, which we have. When you see the videos, they're done well. They're straightforward. There's different types, podcasts. There's all kinds of things that we have. And, I have lessons where they're 4-minute clips of me teaching. There's video clips of me working with some world-class players. There's more formalized videos. There's written word that I have. I mean, I have enough written stuff for 3 books right now. I mean, I could, but I just don't have the time for it. So I'll send out some, little bits and pieces here, audio stuff. So it's just solid stuff. I feel I have so much empathy for coaches and the road that they travel. Look, I've been one. It is not easy. It's not an easy road. It's tough as heck. Raising a family, all the things that go with it. And you know what else? I have great empathy for parents. And so if I were to really say who this site is for, of course it's for players, and it's going to help high performance players and adults. But as much as anything, I want to help the parents. I want to provide some feedback, hopefully some good sound wisdom, and the coaches to encourage them during those ups and downs. And you know what? I want this to be offered to people that otherwise don't have the opportunity to get this kind of what I think quality information. And I'm going to continue to expand with really great experts so that the site is pure. And you know what? My dream is that it will go on in perpetuity when I'm long gone.
I love, everything that you're doing there and the vision of it, and really embodying exactly what you were talking about with the two pyramids, right? And I when I visualize the two pyramids, I almost think of an hourglass, like
Yeah.
that sort of an hourglass looking shape.
Yeah.
And, to me that sort of goes along with this idea of, when, as we get older, as you being able to make more and more of an impact through our work. And I think especially with, the internet and the technology that's out there and being able to reach different corners of the globe that, maybe wasn't possible in the past. I really see this as a way to, to give people, players, coaches access to, really top quality learning that they wouldn't have access to. And I really, I see this as a project to, where you can really impact as many people as possible and continue to really leave even more of a legacy. So I think that's really amazing.
Well, thank you. It's hopefully it goes well. I'm going to build this subscription base, and so it works in perpetuities. It funds itself, and then we can get this out to some people that are if you can impact a few people, then it will be really special.
Well, I think I probably speak for Josh here. We're so grateful for you joining us and sharing your wisdom with us, and love the conversation. I know people are going to get a ton of value out of what you have talked to us about this evening, and I think we're humbled with the fact that you came on and spoke with us, on the Tennis IQ podcast, and I hope we can stay in touch. And of course, best wishes for everything, Nick, for Maximum Tennis, for your high performance, for you and your family.
Thank you very much,
And
and you, same to you as well.
Yeah, so it's been a true pleasure. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. Take care.
Well, that was a really awesome conversation, and there's definitely a lot there. I think there were two main areas that stood out to me. I think the first one was our conversation about some of the concepts like being able to control the controllables and being able to handle whatever life throws at you, both within a tennis match and maybe bigger picture things. And I think, but both of these concepts, as we discussed during the conversation, are really old timeless principles. This concept of controlling the controllables has shown up in Stoic philosophy as well as, the obstacle or whatever is getting in our way, really being the path forward and really trying to move towards it, and acknowledging that as sort of one of the keys to growth. And I like that, that Nick recognized both of those ideas as really key to the growth of a tennis player. And this is really, again, that timeless, that age-old wisdom applied to a high-performance tennis setting. So it's just so cool how Nick has been able to utilize these concepts, and as well as coming up with his own to really, help tennis players of all levels. And then I also really liked a concept that we talked about a little bit later in the interview of he was sort of explaining the pyramid, the two pyramids, the one pyramid with sort of the base on the ground, and then the other one inverted and above it, and how he talked about how as somebody gets older, as somebody becomes more experienced, the priorities can shift. It can become more about leaving a legacy, making an impact on other people. And, it really seems like throughout his career, he has definitely made an impact, through his coaching, through his academy, and now through Maximum Tennis, looking to impact as many people as possible through this platform. So I thought throughout the conversation, those were a couple of the themes that really stood out to me. And again, I'm just really excited to see where this all goes, and really love this conversation with Nick.
I like that the impact thing too, Josh, and the idea like when those two pyramids meet at the top. You talk about it creating a diamond there, right? And that's really cool. And the impact beyond you, and we mentioned that that's sort of like that idea of transcendence. It's not just a selfish thing to become the best you can become, but now you can start serving the world a little bit more. And while we may have connected it to as we get older, we think more about that. I do think you can start to emphasize that even earlier and earlier, and have even in kids make an impact. So I know that here in the Boston area, there's an academy north of Boston, the Manchester Athletic Club, the MAC Academy, and they've had their kids do various things that impact the world as part of like some of the projects that they work on. So I remember some years ago collecting rackets and doing some things for kids in Africa and donating that, right? And that's a way to take tennis and make it bigger than them. And I think it's great when academies or groups or teams do these types of things. Lots of college teams do community service, and that's a way to be bigger than just your team and what you're working on. So I think the more that we encourage that at even younger ages is great. Of course, we as getting older, of course, we want to make more and more of an impact there. So I think it's a fantastic concept. In his bio, there was a term there that he also used in the interview, which was this idea of relentless growth. So that was the other thing I wanted to discuss. And it's really in line with our recent episode on making learning your top priority. But I think he took it, to another level, Josh, with the idea of making it something like a hunger for growth, this relentless pursuit of growth and improvement and learning, and understanding that that's the true path to greatness, not focusing on results and UTR or other rating systems or rankings or whatever. That's on the outside. Those are things that are not fully within our control. But if you can continually be hungry to be better and just pursue that, and we asked Nick about this idea of starting at 12 and then becoming an All-American at Stanford. That's, I don't know, for me that's not normal. There's got to be some underlying thing. Yes, he was a great athlete and played a lot of other sports and so forth, but to me the secret ingredient for making something like that happen is your ability to want to learn as much as possible, to be looking at every situation you're in as a possible learning opportunity. And by doing that, and he even did it as a pro, constantly wanting to learn and understanding what a great opportunity it is to be on the court with these great champions. What can I get from this? So I thought that was really, really cool and of such an important message, especially in a culture that's obsessed with results and ratings and rankings. And that's out there. That's part, I think, the obstacle too. That's out there. How can you manage and balance these things so that you can continue to be learning and improving and put them in the right priority order? So I thought that was a really cool aspect of the conversation. And I just thought there was just a lot of wisdom dropped here. And, I was just listening in on what he was saying, and I was enjoying what was happening so much there that, I want to go back and listen to this episode a number of times because I think there were like so many nuggets there. So it was really excellent conversation. So that's our show for today. Many thanks to our guest, Nick Saviano. And thank you for listening. For more on today's episode, please check out the show notes. If you have any feedback or questions for me and Josh, please email us at tennisiqpodcast@gmail.com. You can also use the Twitter hashtag tennisiq. Additionally, please subscribe to the show on your podcast platform of choice, including YouTube. so you can be notified of new episodes. Also, please check us out on Instagram. If you'd like to support the podcast, please visit our Patreon page at patreon.com/tennisiq/membership. Thanks again, and we'll talk to you soon in our next episode.